What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. I'm going to talk about some key levels to watch for and why SPY and the QQQ are developing a divergence as well, despite the rally we're seeing on SPY. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below, or use my QR code right here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvidia. Deposits $10,000 to get $300 worth of the stock, or deposits $50,000 to get $1,000 of free Nvidia. You're also going to qualify for an 8.1% APY in uninvested cash, and this offer ends very soon in just a couple of days. So if you want to earn $1,000 in Nvidia stock with a qualifying deposits, please check out my link down below to sign up. There's only 4 days left for this offer. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the markets. So as far as the market's going, SPY basically has this bearish divergence that keeps on developing despite the fact that SPY is breaking all-time highs. Yes, we're holding up nicely and the bulls do have a bigger edge, but the price action is very, very tricky, right? We basically pumped with Jerome Powell's speech, dumped back down to 682, bounced this morning, came back down to 682, then we started to rally to new all-time highs. Now we're going to see if we turn back down or not, but overall SPY is holding up quite nicely. However, despite the strength in the SPY chart and the S&P 500, there is a triple bearish divergence that continues to develop on the chart, and simultaneously, the QQQ is showing more weakness. We're actually down for the day on the QQQ, and we're dropping even more in the after hours, and there is once again lower highs being made. So the QQQ is making lower highs, whereas SPY is making higher highs. This tends to be a divergence that could be a sign for a pivot. Of course, it's not guaranteed until we get confirmation in the price action, but as of right now, I want to be very, very careful and advised with the way in which we go about this. So what's happening for tomorrow? Right over here, we have tomorrow, which is going to be Friday, December 12th, 2025. We have a bunch of Fed speakers, pretty much nothing else that's too significant that's coming out. So it's going to be a very, very quiet data day. However, what's more significant is going to be the options chain. So for tomorrow, we have lots and lots of option expirations. We have about a little bit over 300,000 of these calls expiring. And then we also have about 1.48 million of these puts expiring. That puts the total of a 4.47 put to call option ratio, with 680 being max pain. So the question is, will the market just squeeze shorts, or will the shorts fire back and drag the market down to get us closer to max pain to get more of these puts in the money? Both of those are possible scenarios. We'll have to wait and see. Also, max pain could be adjusted as the day goes on, so it's not a fixated thing. This could also change. Besides that, when it comes to earnings, we just got Costco and a few more, but nothing else too significant comes out for the rest of the week. So for Costco, what is good is the fact that they beat a lot of estimations. They had their first quarter revenue at this $67.31 billion area. That's not too bad, as we saw a nice increase overall. And the net sales for the fourth quarter, sorry, I think I meant to say the fourth quarter right here, not first quarter. Sorry, I just want to correct that. But anyways, for the fourth quarter, we also saw the adjusted earnings at $4.50. That's also beating estimations. And the net sales are up 8.2% year over year. And in different regions, we saw nice increases in the US, Canada, and other international areas. We also saw some nice growth overall, so great job by Costco, but the share price is still kind of flat, unfortunately, so it's not actually moving way too much. So that's what we're seeing so far when it comes to Costco's earnings, and there's not really a whole lot else that's coming out. So the question is, what's going on right here? Well, SPY is showing some strength, and this could continue to try to get new all-time highs now, because we have invalidated this inverse head and shoulders like pattern. It now looks like this is like our right shoulder, and that we did not get much of a dip just yet. But at the same time, this could also be a trap. And let's actually talk about this. So we had this left shoulder, the head, but there was no major right shoulder. Instead, we just saw a small dip, and then we got this bounce. But as we're bouncing like this, there is a triple bearish divergence that's forming on the SPY chart, because we keep going higher, but the RSI and MACD are declining. And simultaneously, if we do push for the 690s tomorrow, I think we could be going a bit higher. Then I think we'll still turn down and consolidate. We need to see this essentially lose 682 to break this range and start to dip, but that's not really happening just yet. Now, it's also possible that this is a trap and that we still get that pullback to fill the gap at 675, and then we see a big bounce to finish off the year. So the question now remains, are we done with downside? Are we going to just like consolidate here and see very, very minuscule amounts of downside before we just go straight up to 700? Or do we get one more pullback? Do we come back down to fill that gap at 675 one more time, and then we see a big rally to 700? I believe it's going to be one of those two. We're heading for 700, but we're either going to see consolidation, one big dip because of the bearish divergences if they play out, and then we get a big rally, or we don't really get much of a dip. It's just very minuscule, and we just continue to rally. It has to be one of those two, in my opinion. Now, the reason I talk about a possible dip is that, yes, I know SPY is trying to invalidate the inverse head and shoulders like pattern, but keep in mind, the higher we go, the bigger the divergence keeps getting. We keep on developing this bearish divergence, and then we also have a bearish divergence with the QQQ. The QQQ is just making lower highs and showing some weakness. This could be a sign that the QQQ is going to get that right shoulder, because one thing that's interesting is that even though SPY hasn't validated the inverse head and shoulders, the QQQ has not. We have this left shoulder, we have this head, and now right near the resistance right here, we're seeing a lot of chop on the QQQ. Is the QQQ about to lose 618? If we do, we could be looking for that right shoulder for a temporary dip to 610 or even the low 600s. Then we'll see if we get some kind of bounce or not, at least after that. But that's going to be very key for how we end up moving. Overall, though, look and see if we get some downside. We could be forming a perfect inverse head and shoulders like pattern on the QQQ. On ES, it's not as clear. It's still possible it forms, but ES is showing more strength, whereas NQ and the NASDAQ also has an inverse head and shoulders that could be panning out. So let's talk about the levels on SPY and my prediction, then I'll break down my predictions for the rest of these tickers. I think that SPY is very wild right now. We're seeing price action that's just full of fake outs. I think that tomorrow morning, if you want to be more bearish, you want to see us get back below 685 to retest these lows. But if you're bullish, you want to see us break 692. I think tomorrow we push a little bit higher for the low 690s, but I'm not sure if we just keep breaking up. We might get a turn back down to like 685, bounce back up and just kind of consolidate like this. And then we're going to see if that ends up being the case, because every time we're trying to like bounce, we end up turning back down. We bounced and turned back down, then we went higher. We bounced, turned back down, went higher. We bounced, we could turn back down and consolidate, and then maybe later on we try to go higher, or we're about to get some kind of pivot very soon, because remember, there are bearish divergences and there could be a pivot. So I think we go a little bit higher tomorrow morning for like the low 690s. We might turn back down towards 685 and try to bounce again back towards 690. We see a lot of sideways price action. I think that's the most likely possibility, especially because tomorrow is Friday, and typically on Fridays we get a lot of chop. So there might be a lot of sideways price action like this tomorrow. We're going to see if we could close above 690 or not. But overall, I think SPY is going to be showing some strength. Look for more all-time highs tomorrow morning, a dip back down and some consolidation. I think that's the most likely possibility with all the option expirations. However, when you look at the QQQ, this still has the possible left shoulder, the head, and then the right shoulder that could be forming to form an inverse head and shoulders. Also, notice that it's struggling to break past 630. We keep on touching 630, rejection, 630, rejection, 630, rejection, 630, rejection. So it's possible that this is going to essentially bounce with SPY tomorrow, get close to the low, the 627.5 area, turn back down to 625 and just consolidate. But if we can't break 630, there's a chance this is going to pivot and we could be looking for a move back down, because the QQQ also has a bearish divergence and it's showing some weakness. And also the inverse head and shoulder setup is still valid on the QQQ. There's no sign of this invalidating this just yet. Also, the QQQ closed red today. The QQQ is weak, whereas SPY is strong. That could be a sign we're going to be looking for a pivot in the markets. Now, despite that, the IWM is still very strong. It's looking bullish. It's breaking all-time highs, and there's no sign of this stopping. Since we got back above 255, we're going to be favoring a push for 260 next. I think we slowly stair-step our way up for 260. The Russell is looking very strong right now. ES is trying to break out higher. I think this is going to be going a bit higher for all-time highs. I think the inverse head and shoulders may be either invalidated, or this tiny move down was the right shoulder. It's very small, but that's it. And we're essentially going for 69.50 now. And then we're going to see if we get a rejection, but keep in mind there's a large bearish divergence forming. So as we climb to like 69.50, there could be a big rejection coming. It's a possibility, but not a guarantee. I do think we consolidate near 69.50 to 6900 tomorrow, and we're going to see if we break out higher, get a rejection. I think we go a bit higher first, but there is a risk of rejection looking at the bearish divergences developing. Also, NQ is range bound. We have 25,800 as resistance and support down here 25,500. However, there is a left shoulder head, and we're going to see if the right shoulder is forming. If we reject here, we could consolidate for a bit. Then we're going to see if we break out higher or not. But overall, we have this resistance at 25,800. If that does not break, we could turn back down to 25,650. I think we push a bit higher for 25,900, then turn back down and consolidate. As of right now, there's no solid breakout on NQ. Also, keep in mind that there is that divergence that exists between our futures, so be mindful of that. Bitcoin has not broken out yet. It's just completely range bound. As we hit 89,000, we like to bounce. As we hit 93,700, we like to reject. So I think that this is going to continue to consolidate, could retest 93,600, then turn back down to 91,000. That's a very strong possibility. Looking at Tesla, we're pretty much just range bound, but Tesla's looking more bullish because we're trying to establish a higher floor. Before it was holding 435 and bouncing, now we're holding 440. I think we push tomorrow morning for the low 450s, turn back down and consolidate. And as long as we hold 440, this is going to likely consolidate and try to push for 455 all over again. But if we lose 438, I'm looking for a retest of these lows. So be careful. It looks to me like we consolidate and then try to go a little bit higher as we're making higher lows. On Nvda, we're also kind of like range bound. We're making lower highs so far. We're going to see if we could hold above 180 or not, but I do anticipate a test of 182. Then we'll see if we turn back down. This also resembles a head and shoulders on Nvidia, so there's still some weakness right now. It was also down 1.5% for the day. I do think it bounces a bit tomorrow to 182. Then we'll see if we turn back down, so watch that very closely. Apple had a head and shoulders like pattern, but overall we're still holding up nicely. We formed a wick here, so I do anticipate this is going to be going higher. As long as 278.05 holds, I think Apple goes for essentially 280 next for a temporary bounce, maybe even 282. But then we're going to see if we get a rejection off that head and shoulders once we retest the low 280s. So be very mindful of that and watch and see if we get a rejection. We're in a chop zone on Apple, but we could be looking for essentially 280 then 282 for some temporary upside. Netflix is bouncing off a divergence, back up towards this 96.84 areas or resistance. MSTR has resistance at 185, and we're going to see if we break this. If we don't, we could turn back down towards 180. Celsius is basically forming a nice accumulation. We're also making higher lows here, so as long as we don't lose 43, we're looking for an attempt to push to about 45. On Supermicro, we're also range bound right here, making lower highs. However, as long as we hold the lows, we could be looking for an attempt to retest 34.5. On Palantir, we're looking a bit more bullish. As long as 182.94 holds, we're looking for an attempt for 189. Rivian is rebounding off this wick. I think we retest these EMAs, which are acting as a magnet, taking us back up towards 17 to 17.32. Then we'll see if it rejects, but there's a temporary bounce likely coming. SoFi is looking for 27.33 to 27.77 next for some temporary upside before a potential rejection. AMD is very choppy. We need to clear 225 to be bullish, but if we lose 213, we'll turn back down. As of right now, it's completely sideways, so I think we trade sideways around 220 for now. On ARM, we're making lower highs here. As long as we don't break past 138, I do anticipate we might be rejecting and tipping back down to essentially 133. PayPal is looking a bit more bullish. As long as we don't end up losing 61.29, we're going to be favoring 62.5. Coinbase has resistance at 271. We're going to see if this breaks. If it does, so we could turn back down towards 265. On Amazon, we're also forming higher lows, at least so far. So long as we don't lose 229.9, we're going to be favoring 232 as our resistance. So I see some upside potential. Meta has resistance at 653.4. If that breaks, we're going to be going higher for essentially 658. But if we lose 647, we'll turn back down. So with this accumulation, I think that we could consolidate and eventually start breaking out for 657. For Google, we're trying to hold above 314. As long as that holds, we're looking for essentially 317 for some temporary upside. There's a slight bullish divergence here, and we could be looking for a nice bounce. Microsoft looks more bullish. I want to see us break 485. If it does, I'm looking for 488 next for some temporary upside. And then Oracle, it drops so hard, so it might bounce a little bit. but it's going to be fighting this resistance right here around 200. I think we retest 200 and we'll see if we reject or not. Looking at Broadcom, we got a rejection so far. We're going to see if 390 could be reclaimed. If not, it's going to likely continue to dip back down towards these lows around 374. So I see some downside risk. Finally, a few more. We have DJT making lower highs here. If we don't hold above 11, we may continue to fall back down towards 10.8. The VIX is looking bearish. We're making lower highs and lower lows. I had to redraw this because now it just looks like it's dumping. We even lost 15, which is quite significant. So this is a sign that we're kind of like bullish for the markets. But 14.4 is the next major resistance on the major support on the VIX. We love to bounce near the 14s next. That's another support that's been holding us up since August. In fact, it's been a support since almost the entire year. So the VIX is near major support, which tells us that there is a risk of a big bounce on the VIX. So we'll see about that. The 10-year is still kind of flat right here in the dollar. It's dumped quite a bit, but we're going to see if this bounces off its slight divergence. Overall, this makes me suspect that the market's still holding up nicely. This gives SPY the ability to push for the low 690s. I think we push a little bit higher tomorrow, but there might be a rejection and move back down towards 685, then a bounce back up and some consolidation tomorrow. I think we're going to still see some range-bound price action, but SPY is still showing some strength, whereas the QQQ, it's showing some weakness. It tried to bounce only to reject. This could be a sign that the market might be forming a large divergence and we're about to pivot in a couple of days, if not a week from now. So that tells me that the pump on SPY is kind of risky. Yes, we're pushing, we're holding up nicely. We should follow the price action and be unbiased, but I would still be careful because of this triple bearish divergence and also because of the divergence between SPY and the QQQ. We'll see how it goes, but for now, we're just going to follow the price action. So look for more upside on SPY for tomorrow morning. The QQQ is still showing some weakness, so be careful, and we'll see how it goes. I'll be back tomorrow morning before market open to give you guys another update. Until then, have a good day, night, or evening, wherever you guys are around the world, and I'll be back very soon with another updates tomorrow morning. Thank you for listening, and peace out.